All right, let's talk about compressors. Compressors are amazing. If you use them well and you don't cook your signal, it can be the best thing in the world. It can help. You can use a compressor for all kinds of things. You can pull the audio signal out of your speakers and put things in the forefront. You can push things back in the depth of the mix and send things into the background like harmonies or little extra noodly parts, things like that. You can use compressors for volume control if all you're trying to do is just make sure that the highs aren't too high and the lows aren't too low. You can do all of that. So a compressor is a really important thing that we use. I use them in every single mix, all over the place, probably on every channel. It's just a normal thing that we use, and it's a very important tool to go over. So, first thing we're gonna do is pull, like I said, this is already mixed and mastered, so I'm gonna pull James's hook down to an individual track, which I just have some different compressors on. You can see for a vocal chain, there's all kinds of stuff that I go through when I'm adding mixing elements to somebody's voice to kind of get them set up, processing. But when it comes to compressors, there's some different options. There's all kinds of compressors. You got VCA, you've got FET compressors, you've got optical compressors, all different types of things. And they all sound different and do different things. That's the nature of audio, just like microphones. Everyone sounds different. Every source is different, all of that. But every compressor is a little bit different, and we use them for different reasons. So I'm going to talk about the basic controls of a compressor first. We'll talk about what's what. So many people come to me and they're like, man, I don't even know where to get started on this. So I'm going to kind of get you rolling on what is what on a compressor. So when you're looking at it, you know what's going on. Then I'll talk about the different types. We'll put some compressors on James's voice and just kind of hear the difference of those things back and forth. All right, so the first thing that we are going to do is just open up a compressor and look at it. This is the Logic stock compressor. The Logic stock compressor is cool because it has all these different compressors inside of it, but the Platinum Digital is like the most sterile compressor you can get. So if you're talking about level control, right? You're just trying to squish the high stuff down that's loud and the lows coming up a little bit, level control. This would be a great compressor to use. So we're going to talk about what compression does and the controls and go from there. So, what is a compressor? The way a compressor works is all the loud signals that kind of spark out. So, if you have a vocalist and every other word, they're kind of a little bit louder than they would be on some of the background words. You can use a compressor. It's going to grab all of those louder parts and tuck them down a little bit. And it's going to take all the lower signal, the quieter words in this case, and bring them up in volume just a little bit. So basically you get a visual representation, a nice squish like this. And then if you use a compressor right, you can make the overall volume of something louder altogether. Okay. So we're talking about volume reduction and gain reduction and all of that when we're going into compressors. So we have a few different controls on a compressor. The first one we're going to talk about is the threshold, which is right here. The threshold is when the compressor engages. You set the level at which the compressor then turns on and engages. Now, when I say turns on, I don't mean bypass on and off like that. Not like it would be up here, bypass on and off. I mean the compressor will enact, it will start, it will engage at that moment. So when you're looking at audio, if audio is on the meter and it's bouncing up and down like this, right? You will set a threshold. Usually you turn a knob down to set a threshold and you have your audio bouncing like this and your threshold is here. Once your threshold comes down below where the peak of the audio is and that audio signal crosses the threshold, then your compressor will engage. I know that's a little bit confusing, and I'm actually going to go over here and grab a different compressor that I love that shows this visually really, really well. It's the Waves R compressor. It's one I use all the time. I really love it. But if we're listening to this audio, it's going to show over here the audio signal, and I'm going to pull the threshold down so that the audio signal is crossing the threshold, and then the compressor will turn on. So that's step one. So as you can
We made
see,
money,
we got
y'all can.
audio.
We made money, y'all
And we're
can.
gonna pull it
Yeah,
down.
okay then, alright.
So we had audio signal crossing the threshold at that point. Then the next thing that is important, and we're gonna go back to this compressor just to show you, the next thing that's important to set is the ratio. The ratio is how much compression will happen after the compressor is engaged, okay? So the threshold sets where the compressor engages, and the ratio tells the compressor how much compression to do, okay? So when you're talking about the ratio, you can think about it like this. 1-to-1 ratio, you got a box like this with your compressor, right? 1 dB goes in, 1 dB goes out, okay? dB is decibel, kind of a measurement for loudness, all right? So if your ratio is 3-to-1, you've got 3 dB coming in, 1 dB coming out. Okay, so it's making everything quieter technically. It's compressing those louder signals and pulling them down and bringing those lower signals in volume and bringing them up. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So if you set your threshold or your ratio like that, you've got 3-to-1. So usually, sometimes like this plugin, you can kind of have a scale all the way up to 30-to-1. But in some of them, you have to set a certain button like 4-to-1, 8-to-1, 12-to-1. Anything past 10-to-1 is basically limiting. So we're going to talk about limiters later and what they do. It's basically the same thing, just on a more intense level. But no, anything past 10-to-1, you're in the limiting realm. All right. So when it comes to like where do I set my ratio, a lot of people ask me that. They're like, I don't even know where to start, man. Where do I set this? Where do I like do I start with 6-to-1? Do I start with 3-to-1? I always tell people start with 4-to-1. 4-to-1 is like a good amount of compression that you should be able to hear a little bit of what's going on, but it's not drastic in any way. Like you can really hit it hard at 4-to-1 and it won't be a big deal, right? So that's a good place to start and then go from there. If you're listening and you feel like those peaks are still jumping out and you need a little bit more, add some more ratio. Maybe hit the threshold a little bit harder. But I would start around 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1. It's a great starting place. If you have really, really aggressive transients like a snare drum, you can crank it up a little bit more. But if you've got more of a smooth vocal and you just want to keep it contained, that 3 to 5 to 1 is going to be really great. Okay. So the next thing that you've got is your attack and your release. Very important and can drastically sculpt the sound of how everything plays out. So, your attack is telling the compressor after you engage, right? After the threshold is crossed and the compressor engages, it's basically saying it's going to engage at this speed. Okay. So if you set your attack to 0 milliseconds, super fast, the moment that audio crosses the threshold, it's going to slap it down. Right? If you think about it like an arm like this, it crosses the threshold, it immediately slaps it down. Doesn't let it stay above the threshold at all, right? It immediately goes after it. But if you set your attack a little bit slower, it's going to let some of those initial transients through and then it's going to grab it. So if you're kind of set more towards like 50 milliseconds, you've got 50 milliseconds of time after the threshold is crossed before that arm comes down and grabs it, which can be awesome. It can add a little bit of pump in your music and energy, especially with like a vocal, like a hip hop vocal. If you kind of let that attack be a little slower, you get a little more transient material, and combined with another compressor later, that can be really nice for the energy of the song. Your release is the same thing, but just on how quick the compressor lets go. So you can have a fast attack and a fast release, and it will slap it down and get out of the way, just like that, as fast as it can. But if you have a slow release, it will slap it down and then kind of hold it down and then slowly let go. Just depends on where you set it. Now you can get cool different changes from there. So for example, the engineer that did like all the Led Zeppelin stuff, right? When they're recording out in a church, he did this thing on a lot of the songs that's so sick, where he did a super fast attack on the compressor that was on the overheads, right? So we get a big cymbal hit and it immediately grabs that sound. So you get that right? Turns it down immediately. But then he did super, super slow release, and then it kind of balloons away because the arm lets go, right? So you get, and the shimmer would kind of like expand, and you get this cool effect that you find in their music a lot. So it just depends on what you're going for, but you can set that attack and that release to do a lot of cool stuff for you. For example, if you want in the depth of your mix, you've got a harmony that you're trying to put behind the lead vocal, You can just set a quick attack and a slow release, and it will kind of immediately compress that sound and hold it in the background. And you're just going to be able to stick stuff more in the background of when it comes to the front and back depth of a mix, which is really nice and handy when you're dealing with layers, lots of vocals, which is how modern music is really produced. So, things to keep in mind: if you want something to poke out and jump through the speakers at you, you can do that slower attack and it'll let some of those transients through before it compresses the signal. If you want to tuck it in the background, fast attack, slow release, get that thing tucked back there and don't let the compressor let go. All right, let's talk about some different types of compressors and how they work. So, if we go back to this Logic compressor and we play James's vocal through it, I'm going to go ahead and set this compressor at 4 to 1, and I'm going to give it a little bit of pull down on the threshold just so it will start working and you can kind of hear what that sounds like. Another thing I really want to talk about is this meter is very important on any compressor. They look different on every compressor, but they're important. It's gonna show you the gain reduction, okay? So, what that means is it's showing you how many dB this original signal is being reduced by after going through compression, okay? Remember we talked about our box? Audio comes in this way, it comes out this way. The gain reduction will show you in real time how much, the signal is being reduced through the compressor, okay? So that's important, and what you're kinda looking for, everybody's gonna tell you something different, right? Some people are like, slam that shit, let it go. Some people are gonna be like, barely do any gain reduction, but a higher ratio. You really gotta feel it out for yourself. I'm not gonna lie. But one of the things I kind of look for is that -5, -6 dB worth of gain reduction is a great place to start at least. So you can do a 4 to 1 ratio, kind of get between that -5, maybe -10 range of gain reduction, and you'll start to hear that compression and go from there. So let me show you what that looks like. Here's James's vocal with no compression at all.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blankets, we ain't foe. How could
Let's compress this a little bit. I got this thing at a 4 to 1 ratio. I'm going to start bringing back the threshold, and you're going to see the gain reduction right here happening in real time.
money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blankets, we ain't foe. How could I be mad at strippers?
Already you can hear that that's a little more tame, right? It sounds quieter in overall volume, which we'll address in a second, but it just feels more tight, right? Impactful all the way through. So let me show you the difference on and off with this compressor.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blankets, we ain't foe. How could I be mad?
What you got to be listening for is the jump in the voice, right? I spent bread I should have saved, right? It's kind of bouncing like this, but when we engage the compressor, it's going to pull that stuff back a little bit. Remember, it's pulling those loud signals down a little bit and those low signals up a little bit. It's going to create kind of a more streamlined version of the vocal, okay? So here's before and after one more time.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blankets, we ain't foe.
And this Logic compressor is sick because it's got all different kinds of compressors inside of it. I say this thing is sick, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't really use it. I have all kinds of stuff that I really like to use, and I never find myself really pulling this one up, but it's so good for learning. I promise it's a great one to get started on, and you can get some pretty wicked sounds out of it. But if you just switch between these up top, you can kind of set your settings and just see which one you like, which is really cool. So let's flip through them.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blankets, we ain't foe. How could I be mad at strippers? We make money off the flow. 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 We make money off the We make money off the yeah. Alright, okay then, alright.
So as you can see, they all sound a little bit different. Now, I hope you're wearing headphones. That would definitely help this. It's gonna be hard to hear on an iPhone like that. But those little differences make a big difference in the end, right? Because usually when you're using compressors, you're kind of stacking them. You're gonna use multiple compressors before you're done with your vocal chain, or at least in my experience. And you're not hitting anything too hard with one. You just kind of do little steps with different ones. And I'll talk to you about that in a little bit when we get to some other ones. So anyways, that plugin is great because you can see all different types of compressors. That's got opto, FET, VCA. all the different kinds, and then a digital one, which is that super sterile one. So different types. But I'm gonna go through some of my favorites now. So this plugin right here is a staple in the industry. It sounds amazing, and it will always sound amazing. It's the Universal Audio 1176. Now, the 1176 is a compressor made by all companies. I'm a UA nerd. I love UA. I've always used UA stuff, and I think they sound awesome, but that's just me. Waves has an 1176. Slate has an 1176. Everybody's got one. So just find what you like and rock with it. It does not matter. The gear is the gear. It's about your ears and what you're capable of doing, right? So I like universal audio, but that's just me. But this is a FET compressor, and a FET compressor is a little bit different. It's very aggressive, it's fast, it can get the job done and really pull some signals out of the speakers. I usually use a FET compressor not for volume control necessarily, but for vibe. That's the idea, because it's kind of dirties the signal up a little bit. It makes things a little bitey in the 1K to 2K range. It definitely does the volume control thing that I need, but instead of kind of like this compressor doesn't really feel like it does this at all. It feels like it just sends everything to the ceiling, so it makes it really, really aggressive and fast. So I love it. So on a vocal like this, you can use it in all kinds of ways, but let's talk about this compressor in general. So on some compressors, you're gonna have your ratio be stepped and not smooth, where you can pick any number in between. So for this, you got 4, you got 8, you got 12, and you got 20. Those are your options. If you're on 20 to 1, you're nuking that thing. It can be sick depending on what you're trying to get done. But just be careful about how high of a number you pick at the beginning while you're learning, right? Audio is all about learn a bunch of rules and then break them all. That's kind of the goal. So at first we're learning, we're going to stick to that 4 to 1 or that 8 to 1 ratio to kind of get us going. I'm going to pick 8 to 1. This compressor is cool because it doesn't have a threshold knob for you to set. It has an input and it has an output. Simple, right? The threshold is preset. It already has like a number that it's out, and you just push the input until you hit that threshold, okay? So as we're going through this, let's go ahead and compress this vocal a little bit. I'll show you what to do here.
Can't be off for nothing. Came in money when we never broke. I spent bread, I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blankets, we ain't faux. How could I be mad at strippers? We make money off the flow. We make money off the flow. We make.
So right at the beginning, if you heard that quick change, you're gonna be like, that just made it sound quieter. Like, that's not what I want. I thought that was supposed to bring it out into the world a little bit more. So that's where we're gonna talk about the next thing, which is makeup gain. So important. So first of all, here's the before and after with this compressor. Here's before.
Money came in, money went, we never broke. I spent bread, I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blankets, we ain't faux.
I could see why you would hear that and be like, that sounds terrible. Why would I want to do that? But that's where you can come over here, and where it says meter, you can change the meter on most compressors. It will come backwards like this from right to left to show gain reduction. But then you can also see the output signal, which will come left to right and show you if you're in the red clipping. So right now, when I play this back,
Money came in, money went, we never broke.
I'm barely even hitting the output of that thing. I got plenty of headroom to make some noise. So I'm going to increase my output a little bit.
Money came in, money went, we never broke. I spent bread, I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know.
It's also going to give me a little bit of that analog warmth and grit and distortion kind of stuff that we love in a vocal. And so here's before.
Money came in, money went, we never broke. I spent bread, I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blankets, we ain't faux. How could I be mad at strippers? We make money off the flow.
Right? So there, what you're getting is a much more tamed vocal. That's the thing that's important. It's much more controlled. That first vocal is jumping and jumping and jumping, and it's cool, but when you're listening on headphones, speakers, any of that, you want to feel the sonic impact of the whole song. I don't want the vocal to be floating way above everything else and jumping out at me, especially if you got 808s and kick drums and snares that aren't doing that because they're sample based or they're just really already well produced, and you got a vocal kind of bouncing around. That can just not give a good feeling for the listener, right? It gives that unpolished feel, but enough compression can really get you there. So another type of compressor that we can look at is an optical compressor, which is this LA2A, again, Universal Audio, but every company sells a version of it. This thing is fire. It's a tube compressor, so just like a guitar amp that's got tubes in it, or microphones that got tubes in it, it has tubes in the original, like, box unit. that the audio would go through and everything gets warmed up nicely. But these compressors are known for being low and slow, right? Their goal is to be very vibey, very not aggressive compressors, right? They act very slow. They have a set, attack and release, and they work very slowly, but they have this nice smooth sound to them. They kind of grab the back end of the audio signal and the transients and just kind of like shape everything really nicely. I find when I use this compressor, it's at the end of my chain, kind of at the end of all the compression I'm doing. And I use just a little bit of it just to round out the signal just a little bit. It sounds really, really nice. So here's what this would sound like on James's voice.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blank.
And this compressor is a little bit different. I should have explained this. Let me show you. It's got a gain knob and a peak reduction knob. That's it. The peak reduction is basically pulling that threshold down. That's what it's the idea is that you're changing the threshold there. And the gain knob is kind of like your output, right? So you can add a little bit extra volume, your makeup gain there. So if you hit the peak reduction, you're pulling that threshold down. It's got that set ratio already. And it starts to hit the compressor a little bit. You get that smooth sound you like, but it feels too quiet. Then you can go over to your gain knob and turn it up. Only if you have the headroom for it. Don't be slamming the meter on the right side for the output, because then you're going to get distortion and things like that, which can be really nice depending on what you're doing. Again, that's a learn the rule and then break it kind of thing. But anyways, so let's do a little bit of peak reduction here.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in.
I'm going to look at the output meter. I'm going to switch it here to see the meter change to output. Now it's going to go left to right.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blank.
And there we got that. Now this is going to sound quieter, but again, it's going to be much more controlled and you can place it into the mix a lot better. So here's before.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blankets.
Way more tight and present and put together in that way. Now, the cool thing about this is when you start using compressors, you can use them in chain. So let me show you kind of James's hook vocal. I'll put this back here up on his vocal chain, and I'll show you what compressors we've got going. So in my chain for him, I have the console 1 working, right? So we have this pulled up.
Money came and money went.
Let me get this situated real quick. So if I turn all of this off, right, this is going to be the vocal with none of that. I'm going to turn on things kind of one at a time. I've got this compressor here, which is the 1176. I just have it inside of console 1. And so you're going to see some gain reduction right here.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know.
That's an 8-to-1 ratio. We're hitting that already. Then the next thing, I've got more compressors in the chain. Let's see. I do some multi-band compression, which we're going to get to later. And then the last compressor that you're going to end up seeing is that LA2A, and I'm just hitting a little bit of that.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blankets, we ain't foe.
When you use these tools correctly and you have them set up, you can get some crazy stuff. So here's the vocal before anything.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know.
And here's the vocal after we've got our processing.
Money came and money went, we never broke. I spent bread I should've saved, but you don't know what you don't know. There were nights I slept in studios, no blankets, we ain't foe. How could I be mad at strippers? We make money off the flow. We make money off.
We're going to talk about how to use the compressor to kind of place things in the mix, okay? So we're looking at some hi-hats right now. They sound like this. Hi-hats are the worst. They're sick and they make every song unique and amazing. Like they're the best thing for a producer to kind of switch it up. But the sound of hi-hats always sticks out like terrible, especially when you're listening on your iPhone. I bet anybody who's mixed has had the experience of tucking in hi-hats and it sounds amazing on the speakers. Then you go and listen to it on your iPhone and all you hear is hi-hats, right? So hi-hats, it's nice to kind of tuck them into the background or the texture of the mix a little bit, right? So in this case, we're going to use the R compressor to kind of get this pushed back a little bit. So right now, the hi-hats are really kind of jumping. They're right in your face, right? They're out in the front. But if we just do like a 3-to-1 ratio, which you set right here in this compressor, and then you come over with the threshold and start squeezing down, Now that's happening really fast, so you're just getting that little bit of squeeze. But if you take your attack and you make it fast all the way, this is 0.5 milliseconds here. See how quieter that gets? You can tuck things without, that's not a volume change, that's a perspective change, like a space change, right? So first they were right up here, right by the screen, it felt like. Now I feel like they're behind my screen, which is really nice because what I can do is let up on that threshold a bit. Here's before and after. See, they're a little bit more tucked. Then you could even have the release be slow, so it stays in compression. And now, when you get them in the mix,
I remember dirty flows. I was cold, ain't have a coat. Plugging fans, I'm very hot. Well, like just a week ago, we was laughing over nothing, but ain't nothing was a joke. I was barely making rain. How could I keep up?
Bouncing out of the texture too much. But with that compressor,
I remember dirty flows. I was cold, ain't have a coat. Plugging fans, I'm very hot. Well, like
that's like butter. And those depth things make a big difference in mixing. A lot of times people will send me mixes and be like, yo, what do you think about this? And I'll be like, this thing is sick, but it feels flat. It feels left to right, which is really good. You're using the stereo field really well, but we're not getting that depth. And that's where compression comes in. When you're using these tools to place things in the 3D all the way across your mix, you can really have a more dynamic and just the vibey mix overall. So when someone puts on a pair of headphones, they feel like they just like are engulfed in music and not just something flat. So compression is something that you should be using. Use it on stuff. It's awesome. It's amazing. I love it. Use different types of compressors. Find out how they feel to you. Again, I'm always going to advocate for twisting knobs. But you can absolutely cook your signal if you do too much with a compressor. If you set a compressor to 20 to 1 and you're doing 20 dB of gain reduction, that thing is gone. You might as well just pack it up. So be careful what you do, but also break those rules if it makes sense. If you're screaming into your microphone for something heavy and you're distorting it like crazy, crush it with the compressor. Go crazy. But learn the rules first, then break them. That's always the best way to handle it. So use compressors, use the different types. Start with the Logic one. It's a great way to start. And if you're looking for a third-party compressor that you're just like, I don't know what to get, but I want something, the R compressor is a great place to start. It's sterile. It's got a little bit of vibe to it, which is nice, but it's warm and it gets the job done for both level control and overall vibe. All right, thanks for tapping in with us. We genuinely want you to get better at this. So if you want to get better at this shit, like and subscribe and keep tapping it with us.